Beneath the endless sky of Salisbury Plain, a circle of stones rising from the earth, their weathered forms etch against the horizon like a timeless silhouette. For thousands of years, these stones have stood, unmoving and silent, yet filled with meaning that slips through our grasp like mist at dawn. To approach Stonehenge is to walk into a dialogue between permanence and impermanence, between what we can touch with our hands and what we can never quite hold with our minds. People come from all corners of the world to stand in its shadow, to circle its perimeter, to wonder at its origins. And yet, even as we gaze at it with modern eyes, equipped with science and technology, Stonehenge holds its mysteries close, offering no final answers, only whispers. The scene at sunrise is particularly enchanting. Imagine the first rays of light spilling across the plain, brushing the edges of each stone, creating long shadows that stretch into the earth like outstretched fingers. The stones glow softly in golden light, while the surrounding fields remain hushed and still. In these quiet moments, it is as if the monument breathes, not with the air of living beings, but with a deep pulse of time itself. This place feels alive, not because it moves, but because it has witnessed so many lives before us. Each generation that has approached these stones has brought its own questions, its own stories, and its own dreams, leaving behind only fragments, never the full picture. What is it that compels us to stare at these stones again and again? Part of the answer lies in familiarity. Stonehenge is among the most recognized monuments in the world, featured in books, films, and postcards. We believe we know it, at least in its appearance. But recognition is not the same as understanding. When we look closely, we realize how little we can truly say with certainty. Who built it? Why here? Why this design? Each question branches into more questions, and the circle becomes more elusive. The familiarity gives comfort, but the mystery draws us deeper, like the pull of the tide on a restless shore. To describe Stonehenge is simple enough. A ring of massive stone set upright, some topped with lintels, forming a partial circle with an inner horseshoe arrangement. But to describe what it means, that is where the difficulty begins. Archaeologists speak of it as a prehistoric monument, constructed over several phases spanning centuries. Historians suggest it may have been a gathering place, a burial site, a calendar, or a temple aligned with the heavens. Folklore speaks of magic and giants, of druids and gods. Each explanation adds another layer, another possibility, yet none fully replaces the others. The stones are many things at once, and perhaps that is why they fascinate us still. As night falls, another layer of atmosphere settles over the monument. The stones shift from glowing gold in the daylight to becoming dark sentinels under the stars. Their outlines blur into the landscape, appearing more like shadows and objects. In the stillness of night, the mind wanders even more freely. Were these stones meant to capture sunlight or moonlight? Were they designed to bring humans closer to the cosmos, or closer to each other? The darkness makes the known details fade, leaving only the wonder of what cannot be explained. Stonehenge has endured storms, wars, and centuries of human change, yet it remains. Villages have risen and fallen, empires have expanded and collapsed, and countless lives have begun and ended, while the circle stands, steady and inscrutable. This permanence is humbling, for it reminds us of our own fleeting nature. We pass by the stones briefly, like travelers pausing on a long road, but the stones continue their vigil. They are not eternal in the cosmic sense. One day, they too will crumble, but within the human scale of time, they feel immortal. It is this balance between the unshakable and the unknowable that makes Stonehenge the perfect subject for wonder. It is a circle, but also a riddle. It is a monument of stone, but also of silence. As we begin this journey into its secrets, we will walk carefully between history and mystery, fact and speculation, light and shadow. The stones have much to show us, but perhaps more importantly, they remind us that not everything in life is meant to be solved. Some mysteries exist to be felt, not finished. And so, under the pale light of dawn, with the mist still hanging low, we step into the circle and begin our story. Long before the first towering stone was ever raised upon Salisbury Plain, the land itself held stories. Stories older than the monument, older even than the people who would one day bring their visions into being. To understand Stonehenge, we must first imagine a time when the stones were not yet present, when the wind swept unhindered across open grasslands, when the plains echoed not with the footsteps of pilgrims, but with the movements of wild animals and the cautious wanderings of small human groups. This was a land of transition, where nature and humanity slowly came together to create the foundations of something extraordinary. Archaeologists tell us that the story of Stonehenge does not begin with the erection of massive sarcens or the transport of bluestones. It begins much earlier, around 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, during the Mesolithic period. Evidence suggests that this very landscape was already marked by human activity. Deep within the soil, traces of wooden posts have been discovered, forming mysterious alignments that may have served ritual or symbolic purposes. These timbers, now long gone, once stood upright in the ground where Stonehenge would later rise. They whisper of a continuity of sacredness, a hint that this land was chosen not by accident, but because it was already charged with meaning. In this early time, life was harsh and simple. Small bands of hunter-gatherers roamed the area, sustained by rivers, forests, and the shifting herds of animals. Their shelters left little trace, but their presence is written in scattered tools, flint fragments, and the occasional hearth. To us, these fragments feel fragile, yet they were the seeds of permanence. Imagine a group of people gathering at the same place, again and again, for reasons we can only guess, perhaps to honor ancestors, to mark the seasons, or simply because the land itself drew them in with its open skies and commanding horizon. Over generations, a place becomes more than ground, it becomes memory. As the Mesolithic gave way to the Neolithic, the people of Britain began to shift from nomadic hunting to settled farming. The land was cleared for fields, animals were domesticated, and permanent structures were built. This transformation was not only practical but deeply symbolic. Humanity was learning to shape the earth, to create lasting imprints. It is in this context that we must view the early sacred markers on Salisbury Plain. Before the stones, there were wooden circles and banks of earth, ditches carved with painstaking labor by hands that had only basic tools. These earthworks, though humble compared to the great stones that followed, signaled the beginning of something grand. Picture the scene thousands of years ago, rolling hills stretching into the distance, rivers glimmering under the sky, and people slowly carving out a life in this wild terrain. Fires flickered at night, casting long shadows across the plain, while stories were told around the flames of ancestors, spirits, and the powers of nature. The land was alive, not only in the practical sense of providing food and shelter, but in a spiritual sense as well. Hills, rivers, and groves all carried meaning. To place posts in the earth, to mark out alignments, was not merely construction, it was conversation with the land itself. When archaeologists uncovered traces of these early post holes beneath Stonehenge, the discovery transformed our understanding of the monument. Stonehenge was not suddenly dreamed into existence as a circle of stones. It was a product of centuries of memory, ritual, and continuity. The builders of Stonehenge inherited a sacred landscape already marked by their ancestors. Each generation added to the tapestry, layering earth, timber, and later stone upon the same ground, weaving together history and devotion. Why here, on this windswept plain? The answer is uncertain, but patterns suggest the land itself was chosen with care. Salisbury Plain is a natural stage, its wide openness giving a sense of vastness and visibility. To gather here was to stand under the great canopy of the sky, unshielded, exposed to the rhythms of sun and moon. The plain was also dotted with springs and rivers, sources of life that may have carried spiritual importance. Water, earth, and sky met here in harmony, creating a place that felt touched by forces beyond human control. The mystery lies not only in what these early people did, but in what they believed. Did they see the posts and earthworks as gateways between worlds, as markers for spirits, or as tools to measure the heavens? We cannot know for sure. Yet when we walk the plain today, with the stones towering before us, we are standing not only in the presence of one monument, but within a landscape layered with sacredness. It is as if the very soil remembers. And so, long before the first sarsen was dragged into place, Salisbury Plain was already alive with human meaning. The land carried echoes of gatherings, of rituals, of whispers lost to time. When the stones finally came, they did not mark the beginning, but rather a continuation, a next step in a dialogue between people and place that had already endured for thousands of years. The monument would grow into the most famous expression of this dialogue, but its roots stretched back to a world of wooden posts, circles, and the quiet persistence of memory. From this deep prelude, the stage was set, the land was ready, the traditions established, and the vision slowly unfolding. What came next was not simply a structure, but a marvel of ambition and persistence, the raising of giants from the earth itself. When we look upon Stonehenge today, its massive stones set against the sky, it is easy to forget the sheer scale of human effort required to bring it into being. These are not small markers of wood or shallow ditches carved into the earth. These are giants, monoliths weighing many tons each, lifted upright and balanced with precision that still astonishes us. To imagine their construction is to step into a world where determination, ingenuity, and perhaps something more mysterious came together to achieve the seemingly impossible. Archaeologists estimate that Stonehenge was not built in a single moment of vision, but across many phases, spanning hundreds of years. Each phase added new elements, altered designs, and reshaped the monument into the form we now see. The earliest stones to arrive were the blue stones, carried, somehow, from the Presolai Hills of Wales, nearly 150 miles away. Even with modern machinery, transporting such heavy objects would be a daunting task. Yet these ancient builders managed it with nothing more than ropes, wooden rollers, sledges, and human strength. Did they float the stones on rafts along rivers? Did they drag them across land, inch by inch? The methods remain debated, but the achievement itself is beyond question. Once the blue stones arrived, they were arranged and rearranged over generations, moved into different patterns, as if the monument was a living project rather than a finished design. Later came the Sarsens, the great sandstone block source from the Marlborough Downs, around 20 miles to the north. These were the true giants, some weighing as much as 40 tons. To move them across uneven terrain, without wheels, was a feat of unimaginable difficulty. Teams of people must have coordinated with precision, hauling and dragging, pushing and lifting. The journey of each stone would have been long, slow, and fraught with risk. Yet they came, one by one, until the circle was raised. It is not only the transport that amazes, but the skill of construction. The stones were not simply placed upright in the ground. They were shaped with care, fitted with joints like carpenter's work, the uprights carved with tenons, the lintels hollowed with mortises. The great lintels that rest across the tops of the uprights were lifted into place, balanced securely, forming a continuous ring of stone above the heads of those who entered. This was not the work of amateurs. It required vision, organization, and a deep understanding of balance and design. To stand beneath these lintels, even today, is to feel the quiet weight of knowledge passed down through countless hands. How many people worked on this vast project? Some scholars estimate thousands may have been involved over the years, drawn from communities across the land. Perhaps they came as laborers, perhaps as pilgrims, contributing to something greater than themselves. Stonehenge may have been as much about the act of building as about the finished monument. To gather, to struggle together, to raise the stones, this too was part of the meaning. In the act of construction, bonds were formed, beliefs were reinforced, and the monument itself became a symbol of unity and shared purpose. Yet we cannot help but wonder if there was more. Was it simply human effort that achieved this? Or did the builders possess knowledge now lost to us, methods, techniques, or understandings of leverage and material that we cannot reconstruct? Some suggest that the transport of the stones was aided by sledges on grease tracks, or by rolling logs, or even by ice dragging the stones across frozen ground. Others hold that the builders harnessed water, floating the stones on rafts along rivers for part of the way. Each theory offers possibilities, yet none removes a sense of awe. Even with explanations, the monument resists becoming ordinary. The image of these ancient people, straining against ropes, shouting commands, coordinating movements as they dragged a 40-ton block across the land, is both humbling and inspiring. It reminds us that human determination can create wonders. But it also raises questions. What drove them to attempt such an enormous task? Why devote centuries of labor to a circle of stones? The act of raising giants was not for survival, not for food or shelter. It was for something deeper, ritual, belief, connection to the cosmos, or perhaps all of these entwined. Imagine the moment when one of the great stones was finally raised. The hole dug, the base positioned, ropes pulling as the stone slowly tilted upright, inch by inch. The crowd watching, breathless, as it reached its peak and settled into place with a thud that echoed across the plain. The cheers, the cries, the sense of triumph must have been overwhelming. For those who witnessed it, it was more than construction. It was a creation of meaning, the setting of an anchor between earth and sky. And so, the monument grew, stone by stone, circle by circle, phase by phase. From blue stones to sarcens, from scattered posts to carefully shaped trilithines, Stonehenge became not just a monument but a marvel embodying both the power and the mystery of its makers. We can study the methods, speculate on the tools, and admire the ingenuity, but we will never fully know what it felt like to stand among those builders, to feel the strain of the ropes, the sweat on the brow, the awe of watching a giant rise from the earth. What we do know is that these stones, once raised, were not silent. They were arranged with intention, their positions aligned with the paths of sun and moon, their forms designed to hold meaning beyond their weight. The builders were not merely raising giants for the sake of grandeur. They were preparing a circle that would echo with time, a place where light and shadow would dance across stone, and where meaning, though never fully revealed, would endure. And so, as the giants stood firm upon the plain, the next question arose. What did they mean? Were they markers of time, places of worship, or something else entirely? The raising of stones was only the beginning. The circle was built not only of earth and labor, but of purpose, mystery, and a longing to connect with forces greater than human hands. The stones stand in silence, but silence itself is never empty. Within the great circle of Stonehenge, questions arise like shadows at twilight, stretching across centuries. What did this place mean to those who built it, and to those who gathered within its boundaries? Was it temple, calendar, burial ground, or something beyond our imagination? The arrangement of the stones suggests intention, the geometry too precise to be chance. Yet intention does not equal explanation. To step inside Stonehenge is to step into a dialogue of purpose, one where the voices of the past remain just beyond hearing, and every interpretation is as much about us as it is about them. One of the strongest theories views Stonehenge as a sacred temple, a place where rituals unfolded under open skies. The stones themselves seem to enclose space, not simply standing as a circle of rock, but as walls without a roof, an arena for ceremony. The alignment of the monument with the solstices adds weight to this interpretation. At midsummer dawn, the sun rises in near-perfect alignment with the heel stone, casting its rays directly into the heart of the circle. At midwinter sunset, the alignment is reversed, with light falling in the opposite direction. Such precision cannot be accidental. For the people who built Stonehenge, the sky was not distant but immediate, woven into their daily lives. By marking the turning of seasons, the stones connected human ritual to cosmic order, grounding the mysteries of heaven in the solid earth. Yet was Stonehenge only about the heavens? Some scholars argue it was as much a place of the dead as of the living. Excavations have revealed cremated remains within and around the site, suggesting it may have served as a burial ground for centuries. If so, then the stones might have been more than markers of time. They may have been gateways, threshold between this world and the next. Imagine mourners gathered in the circle, firelight flickering against stone, carrying ashes of their loved ones as they looked upward to the night sky. The rising and setting of the sun would not only track seasons, but symbolize the passage of life into death and perhaps into rebirth. The circle then becomes not only a calendar of the heavens, but a mirror of the human journey. Other interpretations point towards Stonehenge as a gathering place, a center of community life and ritual beyond individual burial. Evidence of feasting, animal remains, and artifacts suggest that people travel from far and wide to come here. It may have been a site of pilgrimage, where tribes met not just to honor the dead or watch the sky, but to forge alliances, share stories, and create unity. In this way, the stones were both sacred and social, bringing together the practical needs of people with the spiritual needs of belief. The circle contained both the weight of heaven and the warmth of human presence. There are even those who interpret Stonehenge as a kind of prehistoric observatory, a tool for measuring time. The alignments with solstices, lunar cycles, and star patterns hint at a structure designed not only to inspire but to track celestial events. To live in a world without clocks or written calendars meant relying on the sky for guidance. Planting, harvesting, migration, and ritual all depended on knowing the movements of the sun and moon. If Stonehenge functioned as such a tool, then it was both scientific and sacred, a monument of practical wisdom shaped into sacred architecture. The truth may be that Stonehenge was not one thing but many. Across centuries of use, its purpose could have shifted and evolved, just as the arrangement of stones changed. Perhaps it began as a burial ground, later grew into a calendar of the heavens, and then became a temple of ritual gathering. Each generation may have added its own meaning, layering belief upon belief, until the monument became a tapestry of interpretations. What we seek now as a single explanation may never have existed. Stonehenge was not static. It was alive, changing as its people change, reflecting the mysteries of life and death in forms we can glimpse but never fully grasp. The mystery is amplified by what we do not know. No texts explain the builder's intentions. No inscriptions record their rituals. The stones themselves are mute, refusing to yield their full story. We are left with fragments, with possibilities, with shadows of meaning that never sharpen into clarity. And yet, this silence is not empty. It invites us to wonder, to project, to dream. In the absence of certainty, imagination becomes part of the monument itself. Perhaps that was always the point. To stand within the circle is to feel both small and infinite. The stones dwarf the individual, reminding us of forces larger than ourselves. Yet the geometry draws us inward, enclosing us in a space of focus and meaning. The circle becomes a paradox, both opening us to the cosmos and enclosing us in a sanctuary. It is in this tension, between the vastness of the universe and the intimacy of human life, that Stonehenge finds its power. And so, as we explore the circles of time and meaning, we find that every theory holds a fragment of truth, but none holds all. Stonehenge resists being reduced to a single definition. It is temple, calendar, burial ground, and gathering place all at once, yet more than any of these alone. Its true meaning may lie not in choosing one explanation, but in accepting them all as threads of a larger mystery. From here, our journey leads deeper, not only into theories but into people themselves. For if the monument reflects time, the heavens, and ritual, it also reflects those who lived and died in its shadow. To understand Stonehenge more fully, we must now turn to the echoes of ancestors whose remains still linger beneath the soil, whispering across the ages. Beneath the surface of Salisbury Plain, hidden in the quiet soil that cradles the great stones, lies another layer of the Stonehenge mystery, the people themselves. For all the grandeur of the circle, it is the human presence, fragile, fleeting, and yet enduring in fragments, that give the monument its deepest resonance. Archaeologists have uncovered remains within and around Stonehenge, cremated bones carefully placed in the earth, as if the monument was not only built for the living but also for the dead. These discoveries remind us that Stonehenge is not just a structure of stone and light, but also a monument to memory, to ancestors whose voices have long since faded, yet whose echoes remain. Evidence suggests that from its earliest phases, Stonehenge was used as a burial ground. Cremated remains dating back more than 5,000 years have been found in its surrounding ditches and within the circle itself. Some of these burials belong to men, women, and even children, hinting that the monument was not reserved for a single elite group but may have served a wider community. To bury loved ones within the circle, to place ashes beside the stones, was an act of immense significance. The living must have believed that the stones formed the threshold, a place where the worlds of life and death touched, where the boundary between here and beyond grew thin. Imagine the ceremonies that might have unfolded. A gathering of mourners approaches the circle at dusk, carrying a vessel of ashes. Fires flicker against the stones, their smoke rising to join the evening sky. The air is heavy with silence, broken only by chants, drums, or whispered prayers. Within the circle, the vessel is lowered into the ground, placed with cares of ensuring the spirit's safe passage. The mourners leave, but the stones remain, guardians over the resting place. Centuries later, we find only fragments, burned bone, bits of pottery, traces of tools, but the emotion of those moments lingers in the imagination, haunting and tender. This intertwining of burial and monument places Stonehenge within a broader tradition of Neolithic Britain, where tombs, barrows, and passage graves often carried astronomical alignments. Death, time, and the heavens were not separate domains but threads of the same fabric. Just as the sun rose and set, life began and ended, only to be reborn in cycles that mirrored the turning of the sky. Stonehenge, with its great alignment to solstices, may have embodied this belief, serving as a bridge where the journey of the dead was guided by the eternal rhythms of the cosmos. And yet, these burials raise questions. Why here, in this circle? Were these the remains of leaders, shamans, or chosen individuals? Or were they ordinary members of a community, laid to rest in sacred ground because all lives were sacred? The bones themselves offer few answers. Some show signs of long journeys, individuals who may have traveled from distant lands to be buried at Stonehenge. If true, this suggests the site was not merely local but part of a vast network of meaning, a place of pilgrimage where people came not only to honor the living sun but to entrust their dead to sacred earth. The presence of ancestors at Stonehenge transforms how we see the monument. It is not only a circle of stone and sky but also a circle of memory. Each burial added to its meaning, creating a cumulative weight of tradition. Generations returned to the same ground, layering ritual upon ritual until the monument itself became an archive of human experience. The stones were silent, but the soil beneath them was filled with whispers, each burial a sentence and a story that stretched across centuries. The emotional power of this is immense. To stand at Stonehenge today is to stand not only among stones but among graves. The people who once lived, who dreamed, worked, and wept remain here in some form. Their physical traces remind us that the monument is not abstract, it is human. We may never know their names or their beliefs, but their presence is undeniable. They built, they buried, and they believed, leaving behind a legacy far larger than themselves. And perhaps this is part of the enduring mystery. The stones are monumental, but the lives behind them were fragile. What drove those people to create something that would outlast them by millennia? Was it devotion to gods, to ancestors, or to the cycles of nature? Or was it the simple, profound human desire to be remembered, to ensure that death was not the end but part of a continuing circle? Stonehenge, then, is not merely a monument to the sky. It is also a monument to the human spirit, to those who came before. The ancestors, though silent, still speak through their remains, reminding us that the story of Stonehenge is as much about people as it is about stone. From these echoes of the dead, the monument turns us back to the living. For if the burials align with the cycles of sun and season, then Stonehenge was not only about endings but also about renewals. The next step in our journey leads us to the dance of light and shadow across the stones, where the movement of the heavens were written into the very architecture of the circle. At the heart of Stonehenge lies a delicate choreography of stone and sky, a dance that unfolds not in minutes or hours but across the vast stage of the seasons. When one first gazes upon the monument, it appears as a circle of silent giants, timeless and unmoving. Yet the secret is that these stones were never meant to stand still in the imagination. They were placed with precision so that, as the sun and the moon made their eternal rounds, they would perform with the stones in harmony, creating a spectacle of light and shadow that carried meaning far beyond the physical. The most famous alignment is the midsummer solstice. On that longest day of the year, the rising sun crests the horizon and sends its first beam through the heart of the monument. It passes over the heel stone, a solitary sentinel outside the circle, and threads its way between the great sarcens, touching the altar stone within. In that moment, the circle awakens. The shadows fall in patterns that the builders must have anticipated, planned, and revered. This event still draws thousands today, as modern pilgrims gather at dawn, waiting for the same light that has broken across the plain for over 4,000 years. But midsummer is only part of the dance. At midwinter, the longest night yields to dawn, and once again the stones align with the rising sun. This reversal is profound. If midsummer celebrates fullness and abundance, midwinter honors endurance and rebirth. The builders must have understood both moments, balancing the circle between light and dark, between life's plenty and life's hardship. The monument thus becomes a vast clock, marking not just the turning of time but the cycles of existence itself. Archaeologists have found evidence of feasts held during these solstice times, animal bones, pottery, and tools that suggest gatherings of immense size. Perhaps entire communities came together, walking for miles, driving herds, carrying supplies. They would arrive at Stonehenge as the seasons turned, uniting in rituals that bound them to each other and to the sky above. Imagine the scene. Fires blazing in the cold dark of midwinter, people huddled in furs and cloaks, waiting for the faint glow of the sun to rise through the stones, a promise that light and warmth would return. Or picture the midsummer gathering, when the plain was lush, when music and laughter echoed among the stones, and when the long day seemed never to end. What is striking is the precision of the alignments. These were not accidental. The builders shaped, placed, and arranged the stones with knowledge of the heavens, and ancient astronomy carved not in books but in rock. The heel stone, the station stones, the trilithines, all appear to play a part in the celestial choreography. Even the smaller blue stones, carried from distant Wales, may have been chosen for their place in this dance. Some align not with the sun but with the movement of the moon, hinting that Stonehenge was more than a solar temple. It was a lunar one as well. The rhythms of night and day, light and darkness, sun and moon all wove together in the circle's design. And yet, mystery lingers. Was this astronomical precision purely practical, a way to track seasons for farming and survival? Or was it symbolic, a way to connect the human soul with the greater cosmos? The truth may be both. For ancient people, there was no sharp division between the practical and the sacred. To know when to plant or harvest was also to know when to honor the gods, when to gather as a people, when to mark life's transitions. The circle was both calendar and cathedral, both instrument and sanctuary. Standing at Stonehenge during these key moments even today evokes awe. When the first rays of sunlight spill through the stones, or when the shadows stretch perfectly between pillars, one feels part of something larger, something timeless. It is easy to imagine how the ancients must have felt, humbled, inspired, reassured that their lives, fleeting as they were, still belonged to the eternal dance of the universe. And yet, the more we learn, the more questions arise. Why did the builders dedicate so much effort to these alignments? What did they believe about the sun and the moon, about time and eternity? Were they honoring deities, or were they weaving their ancestors' memory into the cycle of the cosmos? Each possibility draws us deeper into the enigma, where certainty fades and wonder grows. From this celestial dance, the narrative of Stonehenge expands further. For if the stones mark the heavens, they also link the earth, gathering people, guiding rituals, and shaping journeys that stretch across land. In the next step of our journey, we turn from the sky to the people who came to Stonehenge, the pilgrims and travelers whose footsteps wore paths into the plain, leaving traces of journeys that continue to puzzle us today. If the stones of Stonehenge rise like a beacon, then the land around them whispers of journeys, pathways that carried countless feet, hooves, and wheels across the green expanse of Salisbury Plain. Stonehenge was not a monument hidden in isolation. It was a destination, a place toward which people traveled, sometimes from astonishing distances. These pathways, worn into the soil by generations long gone, are as much a part of the story as the stones themselves. They reveal that Stonehenge was not only a circle of rock and sky, but also a node in a vast network of human movement, faith, and longing. Archaeological work has uncovered traces of ancient avenues leading toward the monument. One of the most striking is the Stonehenge Avenue, a processional route stretching over a mile, linking the circle with the River Avon. This connection between river and stone is powerful to imagine. The river, with its flowing water, symbolized movement, transition, and the cycles of life and death. To walk along the avenue, approaching the stones from the river, must have been a ritual in itself. The journey was as meaningful as the destination, with each step carrying pilgrims closer to the threshold between worlds. The avenue is carefully aligned with the solstice sunrise, reinforcing the link between movement and the heavens. Imagine groups of people walking at dawn, the first rays of midsummer sun guiding them along the path, their eyes fixed not only on the rising light but on the stones that awaited them ahead. The very ground they walked was shaped to direct their steps, as if the earth itself were a stage for sacred procession. This blending of natural landscape and human design creates a sense that Stonehenge was not simply a building but part of a larger, living environment. Beyond the avenue, other sites connect to Stonehenge like threads of a greater tapestry. Durrington Walls, a vast settlement a few miles away, appears to have been a place where people gathered, feasted, and prepared for ceremonies at the stone circle. Excavations that reveal evidence of houses, hearths, and feasting remains, suggesting that thousands may have lived or gathered temporarily in the shadow of Stonehenge. The River Avon linked these places, forming a ceremonial route that joined wood, water, and stone, the cycles of life mirrored in different materials. Even more compelling are the traces of where the pilgrims came from. Scientific studies of animal bones found near Stonehenge reveal that many came from distant parts of Britain, and perhaps even beyond. Cattle bones show signs of origins hundreds of miles away, suggesting that people drove herds across the land to feast at the monument. Some human remains, 2. Show isotopic signatures from far-off regions, indicating that Stonehenge drew visitors from across the ancient world. This was no local shrine. It was a magnet for pilgrims, a sacred center in a web of journeys. The scale of these gatherings must have been extraordinary. Think of the sight, lines of travelers approaching across the plain, some carrying offerings, others leading animals, children running at their parents' sides, elders walking slowly but determinedly. Fires lit the night as camps grew around the stones. Songs rose in the air, drums carried across the fields. For many, the journey itself may have been transformative. To leave home, to travel far, to arrive at Stonehenge and take part in rituals. This was not only an act of devotion but also an experience of unity, binding scattered communities into a shared story. Yet the purpose of these pilgrimages is still shrouded in mystery. Were they drawn by the solstice alignments, seeking to renew the bond between humanity and the heavens? Were they honoring ancestors, walking in ritual processions that reenacted journeys into death and beyond? Or were these great gatherings opportunities for trade, storytelling, and the weaving of alliances among distant tribes? Perhaps all were true at once. Stonehenge, with its blend of cosmic alignment and ancestral presence, offered many layers of meaning, and each pilgrim may have found a different truth in its stones. The thought lingers that the journey itself may have been as sacred as a final destination. Pilgrimage is often as much about transformation along the path as it is about arrival at the shrine. Each step carried meaning. Each crossing of river or hill echoed with anticipation. When pilgrims finally stood before the towering stones, the sense of culmination must have been overwhelming, a physical and spiritual arrival at the heart of something greater than themselves. And so the pathways of pilgrimage remind us that Stonehenge was never static. It was not only a circle of stone but a hub of movement, a place where countless journeys converged, where rivers of humanity flowed into a single sacred space. The stones stood still, but around them life pulsed, voices rose, feet pressed into the earth, leaving behind pathways that we can still trace. From these pathways, our story now turns to another dimension of the Stonehenge enigma, the mysteries of its construction. For while we know people came from far and wide to gather here, the question remains, how did they raise such colossal stones, and what secrets lie in the methods that brought the monument into being? The stones of Stonehenge stand as silent marvels not only for their meaning but also for the sheer impossibility of their existence. When we look upon the monument today, it is easy to forget that these towering giants did not grow from the earth where they stand. They were moved, shaped, and lifted by human hands. Hands that belonged to people without wheels, without iron tools, and without beasts of burden strong enough to shoulder such weight. And yet, there they are, sarcens weighing up to 40 tons, lintels poised with precision, blue stones transported from distant Wales. To unravel how this was done is to peer into a chapter of ingenuity that borders on the miraculous. The blue stones are perhaps the most confounding. These smaller stones, each weighing several tons, come from the Preselau Hills in Wales, nearly 180 miles away. The journey from their quarries to Salisbury Plain would have been grueling even with modern equipment, but in the Neolithic age it required extraordinary vision. Did they drag them over land using sledges and rollers? Did they float them along rivers and coastal routes on rafts lashed together with ropes? Each theory has its supporters, yet no single answer is conclusive. The very fact that people chose these stones, instead of local alternatives, suggests that they carried symbolic meaning. Perhaps the effort was part of the ritual, the stones themselves imbued with power because they were carried across the land at such great cost. Then there are the sarcens, the great sandstone blocks that form the iconic trilithons. Unlike the blue stones, these were quarried locally, though local still meant dragging them several miles across rugged terrain. Moving a stone of 40 tons required coordination, manpower, and tools crafted with precision. Archaeologists imagine teams of people hauling them on sledges, with logs used as rollers beneath, or ropes of twisted fiber pulled by dozens, perhaps hundreds, of workers. To keep morale, perhaps music or chants accompanied the work, each pull of the rope synchronized with rhythm, the community bound together by the shared act of labor. Raising the stones was yet another feat to stand a massive sarsen upright. Builders likely dug deep pits, eased a stone into position, and then pulled with ropes while filling the pit with soil and stone to stabilize it. Once vertical, the lintels, horizontal stones weighing many tons, had to be lifted into place. This may have involved scaffolding of timber, earthen ramps, or ingenious lever systems. Whatever the method, the result was astonishing. Lintels fitted snugly atop uprights, with joints carved to lock them in place. Mortise and tenon joinery, a technique familiar in woodwork, appears here in stone, showing not only brute strength but also delicate craftsmanship. And this was not the work of a single generation. The monument evolved over centuries, each stage requiring planning, labor, and devotion. To dedicate such effort, again and again, suggests that Stonehenge's meaning ran deeper than mere architecture. It was not simply built. It was raised as an act of devotion, of collective identity, of trust in something greater. Each stone set in place was both a physical achievement and a spiritual offering. The sheer scale of the enterprise raises questions about organization. Who led this project? Was there central authority, a chieftain, a priestly class, a council of elders, who directed the work? Or was it the shared labor of communities united by belief, each contributing time and effort in cycles of ritual? The monument may well have been a unifying project, binding scattered groups into one, its construction itself an act of pilgrimage and purpose. Yet even with our best theories, much remains uncertain. Modern experiments have attempted to replicate the methods, moving stones with ropes and sledges, or floating them on rivers. Successes show what might have been possible, but they also remind us how grueling the work must have been. The mystery is not simply how the stones were moved, but why such enormous effort was made. What faith, what vision, compelled people to endure so much to raise a circle of stone on the plain? To walk among the trilithons is to feel the answer without knowing it. The stones speak of determination, of ingenuity, of reverence. They remind us that human hands, guided by imagination and belief, can achieve what seems impossible. And perhaps the true marvel is not the mechanics, but the spirit, the collective will of people who chose to lift stone into the sky because they believed it mattered. From the mysteries of engineering, the story of Stonehenge widens once more. For if the monument was raised through such immense labor, then surely it must have served a purpose worthy of that devotion. Our next step takes us into the realm of belief, exploring the spiritual meanings and cosmic visions that might have given rise to this enduring circle. Stonehenge is more than a puzzle of stone and engineering. It is also a question of belief. When we look at the circle today, standing silent under the open sky, we feel a sense of the sacred that does not require explanation. Yet for those who built it, the meaning must have been deeper still, tied to a world where the boundaries between nature, spirit, and cosmos were far less rigid than they are for us now. To enter the circle may have been to step into a place where heaven and earth converged, where ancestors lingered, where light and shadow were alive with divine presence. The alignments of the solstices hint that Stonehenge was a temple of the sky, a place where the great rhythms of the sun and moon could be honored. In Neolithic belief systems, the heavens were not distant. They were guides, teachers, and sometimes gods themselves. The rising sun at midsummer was not simply a natural event. It was a revelation, a promise that the cycles of fertility, harvest, and renewal were secure. The midwinter sun, rising after the longest night, was a symbol of hope, an assurance that light would always return. To stand in the circle during these moments may have felt like touching eternity, like witnessing the cosmic heartbeat that sustained all life. But the symbolism may have gone beyond the sun. The circle itself reflects a sense of wholeness, a shape with no beginning and no end. In many cultures, the circle represents the eternal cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Combined with burial practices at Stonehenge, this suggests that the monument was both a temple to life and a gateway to the afterlife. The dead were not left behind. They were brought into the circle, placed within a cosmic order where the sun and stars guided their journey beyond. The stones thus became more than markers. They were guardians of the soul, standing watch as spirits cross into mystery. The duality of light and dark, life and death, is woven into Stonehenge design. The bright solstice sun would stream between stones, but the shadows it cast were just as meaningful. Each shadow lengthened or shortened with the seasons, echoing the fragile balance of human life. Perhaps rituals honored this duality, celebrating life's fullness while also acknowledging mortality. For the builders, there may have been no sharp separation between sacred and ordinary, between cosmic cycles and daily existence. To plant, to feast, to mourn, and to worship were all expressions of the same truth, that humanity lived within a vast, interconnected order. Some scholars believe Stonehenge may also have been a healing site. The blue stones, carried from Wales, were long believed to hold special powers. Folklore preserved in later centuries claimed they could cure sickness or grant vitality. If this belief stretched back into the Neolithic, then Stonehenge may have been a place where the sick and wounded came seeking renewal. Pilgrimage, ritual, and the physical presence of the stones may all have been part of a process of healing, spiritual, emotional, and physical alike. At the same time, the monument scale and effort suggest collective purpose. Belief was not just individual, it was shared. Entire communities participated in the rituals, in the pilgrimages, in the feasts. The spiritual vision of Stonehenge united people across distances, forging bonds that transcended tribe or region. To gather at the circle was to affirm membership in a greater whole, to participate in something that gave meaning to existence itself. And yet, what precisely they believe remains hidden. Did they see the sun as a god, or as the eye of a god beyond? Did they see the stones as spirits themselves, or as vessels for something divine? Did they chant to the ancestors, to celestial beings, or to the cycles of nature? We cannot know. What we do know is that Stonehenge was no idle construction. It was purposeful, imbued with meaning, sustained by vision. Its presence speaks of faith, of mystery, of cosmic wonder. As we leave behind this realm of spiritual speculation, we find ourselves drawn toward another layer of Stonehenge mystery, the myths and legends that later generations wove around the circle. For while the builders left no written record, their silence was soon filled by storytellers, who spun tales to explain the stones and their power. These legends, echoing across centuries, still shape how we imagine Stonehenge today. When the builders of Stonehenge were long gone and their voices had faded into silence, the stones remained, silent, immovable, yet too mysterious to be ignored. For later generations who walked the Salisbury Plain, these stones begged to be explained, and when no clear answers were found, stories were born. Myth and legend wrapped themselves around Stonehenge like ivy upon an ancient wall, transforming it from a monument of unknown purpose into a stage for the imagination. These tales, woven through centuries, reveal as much about the people who told them as they do about the stones themselves. One of the earliest legends tells of giants. Medieval chroniclers, gazing at the vast Sarsens, claimed that only beings of immense size could have raised such stones. Geoffrey of Monmouth, writing in the 12th century, recorded in his Historia Regum Britanniae that Stonehenge was not the work of men but of giants. According to his tale, the stones had originally stood in Ireland as part of a great monument called the Giant's Dance. The wizard Merlin, wise and cunning, advised that they should be brought to England. With his magic and with the strength of giants, the stones were transported and re-erected on Salisbury Plain to honor the dead of a great battle. Thus, in legend, Stonehenge was both magical and martial, a memorial wrought from otherworldly power. Other myths grew around Merlin himself. Some believed that he enchanted the stones, teaching them to move, to dance, even to sing. The monument became associated with mystery and sorcery, a place where magic lingered in the very fabric of stone. For medieval minds, steeped in tales of Arthur and enchantment, it was natural that such a strange circle should belong to a world of spells. The association of Stonehenge with Arthurian lore deepened, connecting it to Britain's mythic golden age, when heroes and wizards walked the land. Later folklore gave the stones their own voices and lives. Some tales claimed the stones were once people, dancers who defied the Sabbath and were turned to rock as punishment. Others said the devil himself brought the stones to the plain, laughing as humans struggled to count them. In one version, the devil purchased the stones from an old woman in Ireland, carrying them to England in his apron, scattering a few along the way. Such stories carry humor and darkness alike, reminding us how the human imagination sought to explain what was beyond comprehension. Legends also tied the monument to healing. Folk tales spoke of the blue stones as having curative powers, capable of drawing out sickness or granting strength. Some believed the water that pooled in hollows on the stone could cure ailments if touched or drunk. These echoes may preserve faint memories of earlier beliefs, suggesting that Stonehenge was once seen as a place not only of mystery but of renewal. Through these stories, Stonehenge was never forgotten. When knowledge of its builders and their intentions was lost, the imagination of later generations kept it alive. The circle of stone became a canvas of belief, whether in giants, in devils, in druids, or in magic. Each legend, though fanciful, reflects a truth. That the monument has always provoked or always demanded explanation, always invited people to weave stories in its shadow. What is striking is how these myths mirror the duality of Stonehenge itself. Some tales cast it as sacred, a place of honor and healing. Others painted it as uncanny, touched by devilry or punishment. Light and dark mingle in the folklore, just as they do in the alignments of sun and shadow. For every tale of Merlin's wisdom, there is a tale of dancers turned to stone. For every story of healing, there is one of trickery or curse. This contrast keeps curiosity alive, for Stonehenge can never be contained by a single story. Today, while archaeology has replaced legend in explaining the monument's origins, the myths remain part of its aura. Visitors still whisper of Merlin, of giants, of stones that move when unobserved. The scientific explanations may satisfy the rational mind, but the legend continues to nourish the imagination, offering timeless tale for a monument that refuses to be fully understood. From these woven stories of giants and wizards, our journey turns once more to the quieter, subtler traces that lie beneath the soil. For while myths offer one kind of explanation, archaeology offers another. The ground around Stonehenge holds layers of hidden history, settlements, graves, and forgotten constructions that broaden the circle's story into something even greater. Stonehenge, for all its grandeur, is not alone. The circle of stones may dominate the plain, but beneath and around it lies a vast hidden landscape, a tapestry of earthworks, ditches, and structures that extend far beyond the iconic monument. For centuries, the focus remained on the stones themselves, but in recent decades, archaeological discoveries have revealed that Stonehenge was part of something larger, a ceremonial complex that stretched across miles of land. The soil beneath our feet holds secrets just as compelling as the standing stones, secrets that whisper of a lost world of ritual, settlement, and connection. Surrounding the stone circle are features such as a great ditch and bank, known as the henge itself, which gave the monument its name. These earthworks, dug with antler picks and bone tools, form a circular enclosure nearly 300 feet in diameter. Within the bank and ditch are post holes and pits, once holding timber structures or markers that have long since vanished. To walk here today is to tread on ground that was shaped by countless hands, where timber and stone once stood together, forming patterns that we are only beginning to decipher. Further out, the plain is scattered with burial mounds, barrows rising gently from the grass, each concealing a person or group of people who lived and died in the shadow of Stonehenge. These barrows form silent communities of the dead, linking the monument to the lives and memories of those who revered it. Excavations of these mounds have revealed grave goods, beads, daggers, pottery that hint at belief in an afterlife and at the social complexity of the people who built and used Stonehenge. Some barrows contain individuals of wealth or status, suggesting that Stonehenge was part of a landscape where the living and the dead were closely entwined. Even more striking are the hidden structures revealed by modern technology. Ground-penetrating radar and aerial surveys have uncovered traces of avenues, pits, and enclosures stretching across the plain. Durrington Walls, only a few miles away, was once a vast settlement, larger than any known in Britain from that time. Here, evidence of houses, feasting, and daily life suggests that thousands may have gathered, living temporarily near Stonehenge before returning to their homelands. Linking Durrington Walls to Stonehenge is the River Avon, along which ceremonial routes may have carried people, animals, and offerings, binding together wood, water, and stone in a cycle of meaning. Another discovery lies at the so-called Cursus, a massive earthwork running for nearly 2 miles near the circle. Its exact purpose remains unknown, but its scale suggests ceremonial importance. Perhaps it was a processional way or a boundary marking sacred ground. From above, it becomes clear that Stonehenge did not stand alone. It was part of a carefully designed landscape where earth, water, and sky were interwoven. Each feature, from barrow to ditch to settlement, added to the sense that this was not just a site but a sacred world, alive with meaning. The soil also preserves quieter traces, animal bones, broken pottery, tools of flint and antler that speak of gatherings, feasts, and rituals now lost to memory. These fragments remind us that the builders of Stonehenge were not only architects of stone but also people of daily lives. They ate, they hunted, they raised children, they made tools, they buried their dead. Their world was one of both cosmic vision and humble survival, both sacred ceremony and ordinary labor. The plain carries echoes of all these layers, waiting patiently beneath the turf of discovery. What makes these surrounding secrets so compelling is how they broaden our view of Stonehenge. No longer is it a solitary circle standing in isolation. Instead, it emerges as a centerpiece of a grand ceremonial complex, a heart beating within a landscape of sacred meaning. The plain itself becomes a canvas, painted with earthworks, rivers, and mounds that together create a theater for human belief. Stonehenge is not a single monument, but part of a network of memory, ritual, and connection that extended far across the land. And yet, with each discovery, more mysteries arise. Why was the landscape so carefully shaped? What rituals unfolded in the curses, the avenues, the hidden timber circles? How were the dead and the living linked in these sacred patterns? The answers remain elusive, but the soil keeps giving up its secrets, drawing us ever deeper into the enigma. From these hidden traces beneath the ground, we move next into the vast stretch of time itself. For Stonehenge is not frozen in one age, it has lived through many, each leaving its mark. In the next stage of our journey, we will trace how the monument's meaning shifted over millennia, as different generations looked upon the stones and made them their own. To the people of the medieval world, Stonehenge was not simply a ruin, but a work of enchantment, proof of powers beyond ordinary understanding. Its meaning had shifted again, no longer a temple, no longer a burial ground, but a legend etched into the fabric of Britain's story. As centuries rolled on, Stonehenge became a curiosity for scholars and kings. In the 12th century, chroniclers like Geoffrey of Monmouth wove it into the national history, tying it to great figures and events. In later centuries, antiquarians sketched it, measured it, and debated its origin. Some believed it was a Roman temple, others a Danish monument, still others a Druidic sanctuary. The monument became a canvas for speculation, each generation projecting its own ideas upon it. By the 17th and 18th centuries, Stonehenge was a subject of fascination for those seeking to uncover Britain's ancient past. Its stones stood not just as relics, but as questions waiting to be answered. In the 19th and 20th centuries, Stonehenge shifted yet again. It became both a scientific puzzle and a symbol of national identity. Archaeologists dug its soil, measured its stones, and mapped its alignments, seeking rational explanation for construction and purpose. At the same time, poets and dreamers saw in it a symbol of mystery, a romantic ruin standing against the passage of time. It entered the cultural imagination, painted, written about, and visited by travelers from around the world. In this era, Stonehenge became a monument not only of history, but of mystery itself, balancing between science and myth, fact and imagination. Today, in the modern age, Stonehenge carries yet another set of meanings. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a protected monument of global significance. It is studded with lasers, drones, and digital mapping, each technology peeling back new layers of its story. It is also a place of gathering, where people come to celebrate the solstices, echoing the ancient rituals of its builders in a modern key. It is a tourist site, drawing millions who wish to stand among the stones and feel their silent presence. And it is a cultural icon, appearing in films, songs, and art as a symbol of mystery and endurance. For some, it remains sacred. For others, it is a wonder of archaeology. For all, it is a reminder of the deep time of human history. What unites all these shifts across the ages is a constancy of the stones. The meanings have changed, but the stones have remained. They are like a mirror, reflecting back the beliefs and fears of each age. To the Neolithic builders, they were a temple. To the Bronze Age, they were a place of the ancestors. To the medieval mind, they were the work of giants and wizards. To the modern visitor, they are both an archaeological puzzle and a poetic mystery. Each age has seen Stonehenge differently, yet all have been touched by its silent presence. And so we are left with a paradox. Stonehenge is timeless, yet its meaning is ever-changing. It is fixed in place, yet fluid in interpretation. It is ancient, yet always new, because each generation remakes it in its own image. To sit among its stones at dusk, when the sun sinks low and the plain grows quiet, is to feel all these ages pressing close. The hunter-gatherers, the Neolithic builders, the Bronze Age mourners, the medieval storytellers, the modern scientists, all are present in the shadows of the trilithons. Stonehenge is not just one story. It is all stories, woven together into a circle of stone. And as we leave this long sweep of shifting meanings, we move toward yet another layer, the legends and myth that have clung to the stones, surviving even when memory of their builders had vanished. For Stonehenge is as much a monument of imagination as it is of stone, a place where stories grow like moss upon ancient rock. In the next section, we step into the world of myth and folklore, where Stonehenge becomes a stage for giants, wizards, and gods. Stonehenge today is many things at once. It is an archaeological site studded with precision instruments, a heritage landmark visited by millions, a spiritual gathering place for seekers of many paths, and a global icon of mystery that continues to inspire art, music, and literature. Though its stones are thousands of years old, Stonehenge has never stopped being relevant. Its meaning has not only shifted across the ages, as we have seen, but continues to shift in our own time. In the modern age, the monument stands as a kind of mirror, reflecting back the diverse beliefs, values, and longings of those who come to it. Some see it through the lens of science, others through the lens of spirituality, and still others through the lens of cultural identity. Together, these perspectives form a living dialogue between past and present, history and imagination. For archaeologists, Stonehenge is a puzzle still unfolding. Over the last century, and especially in recent decades, scientific methods have opened new windows into its past. Aerial photography has revealed patterns invisible from the ground. Ground-penetrating radar has uncovered hidden pits, ditches, and post holes, showing that Stonehenge was part of a much larger complex. Radiocarbon dating has helped establish timelines, placing the main construction phases between 1300 and 2000 BCE. Chemical analysis of human remains buried nearby has revealed that people came to Stonehenge from across Britain, and even from continental Europe. The monument, once thought to be isolated, is now seen as a node in a vast network of ancient movement and connection. For scientists, this makes Stonehenge a window into the social and technological world of the Neolithic. It is evidence of cooperation on a scale rarely seen in prehistory, proof that communities could organize themselves to quarry, transport, and erect stones weighing many tons. It is a clue to ancient astronomy, its alignment showing that people of the time observed the cycles of the sun with precision. And it is a record of ritual, burial, and belief encoded in stone and soil. Yet even science admits that much remains unknown. Why was the site built? Why were the stones aligned as they were? What meanings did the builders attach to their labor? Archaeology offers fragments, but the full story remains elusive. This tension between what we know and what we cannot know is part of Stonehenge's enduring allure. But not all who come to Stonehenge are seeking data or timelines. For many, the stones are not only ancient artifacts but living symbols, sources of energy and inspiration. In the modern spiritual imagination, Stonehenge has become a sacred site once again. Each year, thousands gather on the solstices to watch the sun rise or set in alignment with the stones, echoing rituals that may have been performed thousands of years ago. Druid groups, pagans, Wiccans, and others see the circle as a place where earth and sky meet, where the turning of the seasons can be celebrated in harmony with nature. For them, Stonehenge is not a ruin but a living temple. These gatherings, though modern in form, resonate deeply with ancient rhythms. To stand in the early light of midsummer solstice, surrounded by music, chanting, and the rising sun, is to feel part of a continuity that stretches back into prehistory. Whether or not the original builders celebrated in the same way, the sense of connection is real. For many participants, Stonehenge is a bridge between past and present, a place where ancient stones bear witness to modern renewal. The site becomes a stage for both memory and hope, a reminder that even in a technological world, we remain bound to the cycles of sun and season. Others come not for organized ritual, but for personal reflection. For some, Stonehenge is a place of healing, echoing the ancient legends of the Bluestone's curative powers. For others, it is a place of meditation, where the silence of the stones helps quiet the noise of daily life. Visitors often describe feeling a sense of presence among the trilithons, as if the stones themselves carry an energy that touches the human spirit. Whether this is a product of imagination, suggestion, or something more elusive, it is undeniably part of the modern Stonehenge experience. The monument inspires not only curiosity but also reverence, not only questions but also calm. The cultural impact of Stonehenge in modern times is vast. It appears in novels, poems, films, and music, often as a symbol of mystery, endurance, or otherworldly power. From romantic painters to modern photographers, from composers to rock bands, artists of all kinds have turned to the stones for inspiration. Stonehenge has become part of the global imagination, recognizable even to those who have never visited. Its silhouette, those upright pillars crowned with lintels, has become a shorthand for the ancient, the mysterious, the timeless. It is also a symbol of national identity. For Britain, Stonehenge stands alongside monuments like Hadrian's Wall or the Tower of London as a marker of heritage. Yet unlike castles or cathedrals, Stonehenge belongs to a deeper past, to a time before kings and nations. It represents a shared human history, one that predates the very idea of Britain. In this way, Stonehenge is both national and universal, both local and global. It is British soil, but also human heritage, a place where all people can feel a sense of belonging to the deep time of the world. Tourism plays its role as well. Each year, more than 1 million visitors come to the site, walking the paths, standing at the fences, and gazing across the plain. For some, the experience is awe-inspiring. For others, it may be less so, tempered by crowds or restrictions. Yet even through the barriers and the managed visitor flow, many still report a sense of wonder. To see the stone with one's own eyes, to feel the wind across Salisbury Plain, to stand in the presence of something that has endured for 5,000 years, this is an experience unlike any other. The management of Stonehenge, balancing preservation with accessibility, is part of its modern story. The monument must be protected, but it must also be shared. Modern interpretations are not always harmonious. For archaeologists, Stonehenge is data, a site to be studied with rigor. For spiritual groups, it is sacred, a place to be lived in and celebrated. For tourists, it is an attraction, part of a journey across landscapes and landmarks. Sometimes these perspectives clash. Access to the stones is limited to preserve them, but spiritual groups request open gatherings. Scientific excavations are necessary for knowledge, but can disrupt the sense of sacredness. Stonehenge today is a crossroads of interpretation, where multiple meanings coexist, sometimes in tension, sometimes in harmony, and perhaps that is what makes it truly relevant. Stonehenge resists a single definition. It is not only an archaeological site, not only a sacred temple, not only a tourist attraction, but all of these at once. Its power lies in its ability to hold many meanings, to be many things to many people. It invites science without silencing spirituality. It welcomes visitors without losing its mystery. It stands as a symbol of endurance in a world of change, a place where the past and present meet in quiet dialogue. On a quiet evening, when the crowds have left and the sun is sinking low, Stonehenge returns to silence. The plain stretches wide, the grass whispers in the wind, and the stones cast long shadows across the earth. In that stillness, all the layers of meaning seem to gather. The builders who raised the stones, the mourners who buried their dead, the storytellers who spoke of giants and Merlin, the tourists with cameras, the druids with chants, the archaeologists with maps. All are part of the same continuum, all are woven into the fabric of Stonehenge. The monument does not belong to one age or one group. It belongs to time itself. And so, as we prepare to leave our exploration of modern meanings, we find ourselves at the threshold of conclusion. The stones have carried us from prehistory to the present, from burial to legend, from science to spirituality. They have shown us that mystery endures, even in an age of satellites and lasers, even in a world that seeks to measure and explain. As we move into our final reflection, we will gather these threads together, the history and the mystery, the fact and the imagination, and consider what Stonehenge truly means, not only as a monument of stone, but as a monument of human longing. The story of Stonehenge, in truth, has no ending. It is a circle of stone, a circle of questions, a circle of silence that echoes across 5,000 years. We began our journey by asking how such a monument came to stand upon the Salisbury Plain, and along the way, we have passed through worlds of archaeology, of myth, of astronomy, of spirituality. We have seen the stones as markers of time, as graves of the dead, as healing shrines, as stages of myth, as mirrors for modern belief. And now, at the closing, What remains is not a final answer, but something more delicate, a sense of wonder, a gentle awe, and a recognition that Stonehenge is less a puzzle to be solved than a companion to walk beside through time. When you look at Stonehenge, what do you really see? At first, perhaps, you see only stone, gray pillars, weathered and worn, rising out of the plain. Their surfaces are cracked, their lintels broken, their circle incomplete. They might seem like ruins, like the remnants of something long forgotten. Yet the more you gaze, the more the stones begin to change. Their shapes become frames to the sky, doorways through which the sun and moon may pass. Their silence begins to hum with a music beyond words. Their stillness begins to move in the rhythm of seasons. And you realize that what you are seeing is not ruin, but survival, an architecture not of collapse, but of endurance. Stonehenge endures. It has endured the weather of millennia, rain, frost, wind, and sun. It has endured the plow and the pasture, the war and the road, the footstep and the gaze. It has endured the shift of cultures, from Neolithic to Bronze Age, from Celtic to Roman, from Saxon to Norman, from medieval to modern. It has endured being forgotten, being rediscovered, being claimed, being studied, being doubted, being celebrated. It has endured because endurance is its essence. The stones were set to last, and in lasting, they have become something greater than their builders could have imagined. To reflect upon Stonehenge is to reflect upon time itself. We live in a world that moves quickly, where technology shifts each year, where buildings rise and fall within decades. Yet here is something that has lasted 5,000 years, not as a fossil, not as a ruin sealed away, but as a presence still alive in human imagination. Stonehenge teaches slowness. It asks us to measure not in hours or years, but in centuries and millennia. It reminds us that beneath the rush of daily life, there is a deeper rhythm, the turning of the earth, the path of the sun, the flow of generations. And yet, for all its age, Stonehenge feels strangely timeless. When you stand among the stones, the centuries blur. The Neolithic farmer, the Roman traveler, the medieval poet, the Victorian antiquarian, the modern tourist, they are all there, overlapping, sharing the same circle of stone, the same sky, the same silence. Past and present fold into each other, as if the monument exists outside of time altogether. In this way, Stonehenge is not only about history, but about eternity. It is not only about what is past, but about what continues, always. In our reflections, we may also consider what Stonehenge says about us, about human beings as makers of meaning. Why did our ancestors raise these stones? Why did they labor with ropes and logs and muscle to create something that would outlast them? Perhaps it was for the dead, to honor their memory. Perhaps it was for the living, to mark the seasons. Perhaps it was for the gods, to bridge earth and sky. Or perhaps it was simply for beauty, for wonder, for the desire to leave behind something greater than oneself. In truth, the reasons may never be known, but what matters is that they did it, and in doing it, they revealed a truth about humanity, that we are creatures who long to connect with nature, with the cosmos, with each other, and with the future. When you stand at Stonehenge, you feel this longing. You feel it in the vastness of the plain, in the weight of the stones, in the quiet geometry of the circle. You feel that you are not only in the presence of history, but in the presence of human desire, the desire to belong to something larger than a single life. The builders of Stonehenge lived and loved and died thousands of years ago, yet their longing is still with us, still inscribed in the stone. It reaches across the ages and touches us now, reminding us that the need for meaning is timeless, and that in seeking it, we are never alone. And so, Stonehenge is not only a monument of stone, but a monument of longing. It is the embodiment of questions we still ask. Where do we come from? Why are we here? How shall we honor the passage of time? What lies beyond death? These questions have no simple answers, yet Stonehenge gives them shape. It does not speak in words, but in silence. It does not explain, but it gestures. It does not resolve, but it endures. And in that endurance, it comforts. At night, when the plain is quiet and the stars are bright, Stonehenge takes on another presence. The stones darken into silhouettes, and the circle seems to merge with the constellations above. Some nights, the moon rises perfectly between the trilithons, casting pale silver across the grass. On solstice mornings, the first light of dawn pours through the healed stone, striking the altar. In these moments, it is as if earth and sky are speaking to each other, using stone and light as their language. To witness this is to feel, if only for a moment, that we are part of a universe that breathes, that remembers, that holds us. And when we close our eyes, Stonehenge follows us inward. It becomes not just a place on the plain, but a place within, a circle of stillness in the mind, a temple of calm in the heart. To meditate upon it is to walk among those stones in imagination, to feel their cool surfaces, to hear the whisper of wind through their gaps, to stand in the center and let time flow around you. In this way, Stonehenge becomes a guide, a teacher of patience, of reverence, of silence. So, as our journey comes to its conclusion, let us not think of Stonehenge as a mystery to be solved, but as a mystery to be lived. Let us carry with us the sense of wonder it inspires, the calm it offers, the reminder that in a world of change, some things endure. And perhaps, in our own lives, we too can build circles, not of stone, but of meaning. We can create rituals that honor the seasons. We can tell stories that connect past and present. We can leave behind traces that future generations may find. In this way, each of us is a builder. Each of us is part of the long human circle. Stonehenge remains. Silent, vast, eternal. The stones keep their vigil on the plain, waiting for the sun, waiting for the stars, waiting for us. And we, in turn, return to them, not only in body, but in thought, in imagination, in dream. For Stonehenge is not only out there, but within us. It is a part of us that longs, the part that wonders, the part that endures. And in the quiet of night, when sleep begins to fall, it is as still, an ancient circle of stone, resting in the mind, keeping watch as we drift into the vast mystery of dreams.